welcome to the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook, and this is a podcast celebrating everything to do with the world of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal, or extreme metal, and sometimes weird folk music, as we'll get to. How are we all doing? Are we all doing grand? You wouldn't be able to tell, video podcast watchers. You wouldn't be able to tell. My hair is like this really shit blonde green mess, which feels so dead and dry, and I'm too scared to put more dye on it. I look like, what's the guy from Pierce the Veil? Is it Vic Fuentes, or is that Sleeping with Sirens? No, it's Pierce the Veil. I look like his hobo chic younger brother that they don't let out, or they don't let come around at Christmas. Usually I've got my hair shaved at the sides and it's all fucking long. You can see my awful hairline. But it is so grey. It's so fucking grey. I am an old man, apparently, at 25. It's bullshit. But other than that, it's grand. It's not. We'll get to it at the very end of the show because we want to talk about music first. Coming up this week, we're going to be looking at albums from... Stop it, computer. We're going to be looking at albums from Trivium, This Place is a Zoo, Ye Banished Privateers, but we're going to start with Enter Shikari and their 6th studio album, Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. 6th studio album there from St. Albans in the United Kingdom of England. And it's quite the fascinating rise for Shikari. When you, looking at the discography, starting on Take to the Skies and Common Dread, are very to me, if you look at them or you listen to them, you would think that they are two cult releases or a cult following releases, and the band just sort of faded away once that sort of that kind of music sort of filtered away to electronica post-hardcore stuff that was really, really, really popular mid to late noughties. But the fact that they are now one of the biggest British bands going, they've adapted their very raucous electro hardcore sound into this very electro pop rocky sort of thing. And for me personally, I've listened to, I think the only album that I haven't listened to is the Minesweep. Somehow I completely missed it. But yeah, I just think it's really fascinating to look at the evolution of the sound, going from, again, that really, really intense electronicore to up into the Spark, where Spark felt like such a big gap between, stylistically between albums, because the Spark was very electro-poppy. A lot of the rock elements were pulled back, and for good or for worse, I thought when the Spark came out, I quite enjoyed it. For what it was, looking back on it, and I think, oh yeah, this song was great, and I listened to it again, I was like, ooh, maybe it's not quite as good as I remember, but there's still moments on it. I think I've got the complete opposite with A Flash for the Colour. I remember really not liking it when it first came out, and now it's potentially my favourite Shikari album. And yeah, for whatever reason, I completely missed the Minesweep. I think because at the time I hated Flash Flood so much, I said I was done. And then for whatever reason, I changed my mind on Spark, of all albums. For Everything Is True and Nothing Is Possible, I kind of feel like it'd feel more natural sitting in between Flash Flood and the Spark. At the moment, a lot of this is going to be without the context of the Minesweep as well, but a lot of it is going from Flash Flood and Minesweep, where you've got, it's very alternative rock with the embers of their post-hardcore past creeping in every now and again, with a lot of electronica and a lot of dubstep and drum and bass and things like that. And then if they went from that into Nothing Is True, where it's very much sort of a half and half between the alternative rock and the electronic stuff, and then you go into Spark, which is very, very electronic, that feels like a more natural progression of the sound for what they look like they want to go to. I feel like they want to go a bit more electronica these days. But the way it looks now was going from Flash Flood and then Minesweep into the very electronica heavy Spark. And then when they saw that it was very 50-50 divide between people who hated it and loathed it, they were like, let's bring it back a bit and then work our way back again with Nothing Is True. And you know, they haven't done a Suicide Silence and gone straight back to Minesweep or Flash Flood or even like Common Dreads or something like that. One of the first things, like, so listen to the album, to this album. One of the things that really started getting me was the drums. It feels very like electronic music based drums, even though I don't know if he's using electronic drum kit or still using an acoustic one. But the vibes I kept getting off it, because the way the drums hit, it's not just a bang, it's a thump. It's a build before it's hit. It reminded me a lot of Sleep Token. And I know Sleep Token has got loads of like modern pop influence in the music. So is that style of drumming just like the norm for modern pop? Have I just completely missed it because I don't listen to that much modern pop anymore? Well, ever. But especially now when I don't have older sisters to dominate the TV. And there are times where it really, really helps music, that kind of like thump kind of drumming. It adds a lot of depth to songs like The Great Unknown, Tina, and Satellites. I think they work really well. And for me, those songs are probably the highlights of the album. Tina is one of the big... yes. Tina is one of the more rockier songs on the album. The electronic parts feel more old school to Shikari. It feels like they're borrowing a lot of like the electronic ideas and electronic sounds that we're using for Take the Skies and Common Dreads. It's not a bad thing. Those albums are a lot of fun. Satellites has like this really brilliant chorus, so like the bursts of electronics with the drums. Rue sounds great. I initially want to call it a swell, and I love me some swells. Swelling just gets me. But it's not quite that. It's just like a peak of the wall of sound, and I think it just works really well. Another song I want to point out is like the 2-part Marionettes song. I just think that's really good. I think a lot of Shikari songs, I always see them as like a collection of songs rather than one fluid album, and this is the same. It's just a few songs for me. But going from Marionettes, like the part 1 to part 2, obviously they're next to each other. It could have just been one big song. I completely understand why they split it into 2, because most modern music fans won't want to listen to like a standalone 9-minute song. But if you split it in half, I can't comment. I fucking hate overlong songs, so hypocrite. For me though, Marionettes is very cinematic. It feels very dramatic, and it feels like there's a big event happening with the song. To me, it's a fantastic showcase of their electronic side. Fuck, I need to find a better word for electronic. And I feel like it does that better than anything the Spark did. Like I said, I quite liked the Spark when it came out. It's filtered off a little bit for me. But if you want to show off what Shikari can do with all their electronic stuff, I feel like Marionette's 2-parter has done it a lot better than what Spark did. Definitely, though, the star for me for the album is The Great Unknown, the opener of the album. Again, I'd still say it's very Sleep Token-y in its drums. I'm going to use the example of Sugar purely because it came on my shuffle the other day, and I fucking love that song. But the way the drums hit, and like it's a smash of drums, and then it's the rhythm, and it's a smash of drum, and then it's the rhythm, remind me a lot of that, a lot of Sleep Token stuff in that regard. And yeah, I just don't know if it is like a modern thing now to have, anytime you've got a pop influence on a rock record or just pop in general, that's what they do to add a bit more depth and add a bit of character to the music. That like thop, apparently, as I want to describe it. Yeah, Great Unknown is a fucking belter of a song. I had really high hopes on the album based on just that. Because the first song I listened to from, because obviously they released a bunch of singles beforehand, Dreamers Hotel, I wasn't keen on. That was the only one I listened to because I tried to listen to one, and then as soon as they say our album's coming out at this date, I try to stop listening to what comes after. I want to get the whole piece. Yeah, Dreamers Hotel at first I thought was quite. It was just very. It was just there. It felt like a B-side from Flash Full of Color. It's a song that's grown on me since, but yeah, going into The Great Unknown, I thought, fucking hell, this is the song. And this I think it did eventually get released as a single, but this should have been like the lead. This should have been a song to get everyone talk about. Holy shit, this new Shikari song coming out, and like go from there. But personal preference at the end of the day, isn't it? So yeah, Tina, Satellite, the Marionette Duology, The Great Unknown. For me, they are the high spots of the album. There are a lot of stinkers on the album. It's again, with a lot of Shikari albums that I've listened to, it's very much of I pick out songs that I like as opposed to listen to it as one fluid album. Modern Living feels like it was meant to be the non-single single. In a few years' time, where people talk about Shikari's back catalogue, and when you get to Nothing Is True and Everything's Possible, they'll say, oh, that had Modern Living on it. And I feel like, yeah, this is a song that the album was meant to be remembered for. I think a lot of it comes down to the like main chorus line, or the main line repeated. We're apocalyptics drinking gin and tonics. What does that fucking mean? For me, I think it means like we just crave, like we, mankind, humans, just crave ruining our own planet, but we're also using our privilege, I guess, just to drink gin, ignore it. It's a very big political statement if it is along that sort of thing, but I just think it feels so. I don't want to say corporate because even I know Shikari are not a very corporate band. They're very political. They're very forward thinking, and you know, a lot of respect for them for that. But it's a type of phrase. We're apocalyptics drinking gin and tonics. I can see it printed on a line at River Island, or I don't know. It's going to be on like Instagram and Twitter bios for like super edgy person. Yeah, I just feel like it's very, very. It fits a certain kind of person, which is cruel. A cruel thing to say, but pretty darn accurate in my opinion. So yeah, I think Modern Living is just a bit of a. Ruru's always been very like hit and miss with his lyrics. Anyway, sometimes he is brilliant, and then other times you think someone in like year 7 has read The Tempest for the first time and wants to be the next Shakespeare, and that's Ruru. So I think it was a bit of a doozy this time. The King, I feel like, is trying to cram their entire discography into one song. In the run-up to the album, Ruru went on record in an interview somewhere and said, "This is the one that I found with Pastor and Mate. Like, you don't know Shikari, this is where you start." And I feel, for the most part, that is a bang-on statement. I think this album encapsulates the band sound up to and including Common Dreads. I think like Take to the Skies is a bit too intense to be represented here in Nothing's True. But yeah, the rest of the album, I feel like it does take parts of, even like parts of Common Dreads, because that was when they was finally started, well, not finally, it was only the second album, but that was, Common Dreads is where they started putting a lot more alt-rock melodies into their post-hardcore, and that eventually evolved into Flash Flood, and then, I assume, Minesweep. Yeah, Common to Minesweep, I feel like it's like a very natural progression of their sound, and then you get to Spark, and then my idea of how they should be released, but blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I feel like the album does a great job of representing parts of everything from Common all the way up to the Spark. But then you get to the King, and it feels like they're trying to do all that into one tight song. How long is it? It doesn't really feel like it's a long song anyways. I think it's true. The King. It's less than 3 minutes of 10 years worth of music. And I like... listen to it, I'm reminded of songs like Kel Surprise, Thumper, Snake Pit, Gandhi Make Gandhi. And yeah, I just feel like it's a lot happening at once, and yeah, I just think it's a bit toilet. Crossing the Rubicon, I wrote it down, and now that I think about it, I think it's a pretty harmless song actually. It's just very much not for me. I think it's a very twee, very very sweet kind of pop rock song. Sort of thing where I can see it on If We Ever Have a Summer, like fucking ice drinks or ice cream, or you hear it at like beach parties, that sort of thing. And that's fine for a song. It's just not for me. So I think I rescind me slagging off Crossing Rubicon. I just think it's a song that's very much not for me. Interestingly, the song that's most interesting to me is Elegy for Extinction. Shikari have like built a career on doing weird and wonderful things. They are, as much as like they're very hit and miss with myself. I don't know. They've got the people who really like Shikari, really fucking like Shikari. They have always been known to take chances and like explore different things. That's why they've like, not only are they like one of the few bands from that like electronic era that's still going, they're adapting electronic to fit around what's popular at the time. So they had a phase of drum and bass. They had a phase of rave. They had a phase of dubstep. With Spark, I feel like they went more the like electro pop and synth pop stuff that was big at the time. And despite all that, I honestly feel like Elegy for Extinction is probably the most out there song they've written. How long is it again? It's just shy of 4 minutes, and it's just one big orchestra. It's an orchestral. It's a classical orchestra piece of music. Fuck. And I don't know who it's for. Like they've had like the interlude tracks in album before. I think they have one on here, don't they? Isn't it? Well, they Reprise 3. They've got a song called Apocalypse Anonymous. Main theme from B minor. That's another reason why I feel like Apocalypse is meant to be the big catch from this album. And they have, I can't remember what it's called on the Spark, but they have it on Spark. They've got like a 2-parter thing on Common Dreads as well. It's like A and B. That one will bug me. It'll take me ages to find the one on the Spark. Havoc A and Havoc B. They're like interlude songs as well, but they are electronic music. Even the one on Spark is very much it's long, drawn out notes. It's very ambient in that regard. But I always feel like it fits better to what Shikari do because they are rooted in electronica. Whereas having a full orchestration, I don't know if their core audience is really gonna notice or care about an orchestral song. Yeah, like I have friends at work who are massive Shikari fans, and I don't think they're gonna give a shit about a bit of orchestral music in the middle of it. I don't know what kind of fan would be going for that kind of song. Interlude, I know people who like interlude tracks because there's bind albums together. Fair enough. I just don't think for Shikari, a song like Elegy for Extinction is what they should be doing. Well, no, that sounds horrible. Never, not what they should not be doing. I just don't think it fits. I just don't think it. I don't know who it's for. I don't know who's gonna listen to Nothing's Possible and think, oh, Nothing Is True, and think, listen to it as an album. It bound the album together. It made it one fluid piece of music. So yeah, I just thought it was like a really weird one, and of all things Shikari did, this was the thing that really made me think that it just does not belong. And there's a lot going on in this album. Yeah, it's. Again, with the album in general, there's a lot of like good songs now. I said before, The Great Unknown, Tina, Satellites. I like The Marionettes, Duology. Pressure's On was pretty decent as well. But yeah, it's just their greatest hits for me. I feel like I'm just trying to think. Was I ever like a massive fan of Shikari? I think like they've always been like greatest hits. Like they come on rock nights, or even like a lot of the music from Flash Flood to Spark pops up on indie nights as well now. You know the words, you're singing along, you have a great time. And I've seen them live, and they are fucking great live. I just feel like with this, it's just just a few songs here and there. The whole album, there's things on here for me. Basically, I don't need the whole album. I've got what I want from it. I've got what I necessarily need from it. And yeah, I think Shikari fans are going to go batshit over it, because I feel like they've got the kind of following now which are always going to love what they do. Like I said, there's bits on the album where it goes too much at one time. There's bits I don't think just really fit in right. It reminds me a lot of Waiting for Morning to Come by We Are the Ocean. Yeah, because that was the album that had loads of interlude tracks, and the songs on there were pretty decent, but there's so much interlude. Like, for me, I'm always impatient, so I just feel like to listen as one big beat of music, yeah, okay, but then when you spend more time waiting for the songs to start than you do, like taking it all in, it can be done well, but I just don't think they did it right, and I think it's the same here. They're trying to really piece together like one fluid bit of music, and yeah, I just don't think it's worked as well as I think they hoped it would. But like I said, there's a couple like really decent songs on there. I'll still rep for The Great Unknown. That's a fucking belter of a song. And there are songs on here which are pretty harmless fun, and there's some on there which are pretty harmless cack. There you go. That's me. It's the 6th album from Enter Shikari. It's called Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. I'm still happy when people say like names from British bands, and one of the first ones they say is Enter Shikari. I'm not going to be upset by that. I feel like Shikari are still quite a nice band and quite a nice name to have associated with like English or British music. I feel like very different likes and dislikes compared to a general Shikari output. But there we go. And when I say I have very different preference for my output, we're going to be moving on now to a pirate folk band. And I can't even remember how I found them. They're called Ye Banished Privateers. And is it meant to be the Banished Privateers? Because YE evolved to be the. That's, if you ever see like Ye Old Tavern, that sort of thing, it's called the Old Tavern. That's what Ye stands for. Or Ye means. I'm going to keep calling it Ye purely because I've been watching a lot of Josh Dub videos, and they all say yeet a lot, and that's again, I say yeet a lot to begin with. Now it's going to be way worse when I go back to work, if I ever go back to work. But yes, anyway, history lesson for you. Ye Banished Privateers, their 4th album is called Hostis Humani Generis. Generi. It's Latin. I think it means the enemy of the land. Or the enemy is the land. I read it yesterday and I slept, and so I've forgotten it. But I know it's something. It's very in keeping with the whole pirate theme. And boy, is this piratey. It's their 4th album, like I said. They're from Umeå in Sweden, and like I said, they're a pirate folk band. They have an excess of 30 odd members, and the band came together under the few forefathers of the band, I guess you could say, and they all came together under a mutual love of traditional Irish and Scandinavian folk music, which is there in spades. They've got mandolins, djembas, accordions, violins, a bunch of instruments never heard of, which are basically like smaller versions of guitars or larger versions of violins. It's a very organic sounding folk sound, and I think very in keeping to what the kind of sounds you'd get from pirate times. We'll get into. Lyrically, it's also I think their entire discography, I imagine, is is based around the happenings of the 17th and 18th centuries. And a lot of it is very classic pirate tales. So you got William Kidd, you got Anne Bonny, Nassau, and like the entire West Indies. You got the British being assholes. Classic, normal, everyday things that happened during those times. From the off, you are instantly in the world that Ye Banished Privateers want you to be in. Opening song, No Pray, No Pay. It kind of cheats a bit. It has like a sound effects of crashing of waves. I feel like if you didn't have that, you would instantly get the right mindset, because of, like, it starts with a little accordion jingle and then goes into like a very rhythmic drum beat, which is very much like a everyone's there clapping their hands, watching people be really good at music. Not like I am. And yeah, from then on, you would just, for how long is that? 54 minutes, you would just feel piratey. And it sounds so dumb, but my God, it's just so well done. This entire, I guess it's a gimmick. This entire gimmick is done so well. And I feel like it's because there's a lot of love in the gimmick. There is another very notable band who uses pirate aesthetic. And comparatively between these guys and them, it feels like Ye Banished Privateers have come into it and said, look, we're going to be a pirate band. If we're going to do it, we need to really, really do it. So they've took it seriously. They have got all the right components in. Like, I've read that in interviews, they will talk in Pirate Talk. They all dress up on stage. That's 30 people in outfits and costumes. The music, I don't know how, but we all have like a very, like, a rooted understanding of what pirate music would sound like or does sound like. Like the bulk of my pirate knowledge comes from playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And even before playing that, I kind of knew what pirate music was. But there's so much care and attention going into this outfit and this band, while still retaining the fact that they know they're all dressed up like fucking pirates. So they're taking it seriously but having a lot of fun with it. And I feel like based on that, the results they get in their music just sound so better, because they're actively trying and are allowing themselves to have fun with it. And I think the quality in what they come up with, it speaks for itself. The wall of sound that they have behind the lead vocalist for Hush Now My Child is fucking beautiful. The imagery it creates, you're on a ship, the sun's gleaming, you've got some rags which you think make you look cool. Those thoughts of what you would look like as a pirate, they come so easy and come so effortlessly when you listen to a song like Hush Now My Child. Elephant's Dance kind of reminds me a little bit of Flog and Molly, which I feel like is a very, like, if you haven't listened to the album, it's very easy to say, oh, they sound like that Celtic punk band. That comparison to other like Celtic punk or Celtic rock anything, it doesn't happen as often as you think. I think the only reason Elephant's Dance was, I think the song that reminded me of it was Queen Anne's Revenge, it's already a song about Blackbeard's ship anyway, so I feel like that's why I've made the connection there. But outside comparisons don't happen as often as you think. This is why I think Ye Banished Privateers do it so well, because they sound very them and very unique in how they execute what they want to do. Rowing with one hand is the fucking dumbest shit. It's so much fun though. I feel like I'm going to use the word fun a lot for the review, but it's so fucking silly. It sounds like your granddad has got really excited after having a few too many bevs, and it's like, it's so stupid. It sounds nothing like that as well. I don't know where I got the tune from, but it's fucking, oh god, it's ridiculous. It's so much fun though. This album is just, again, it feels like so much love's gone into it that you feel like you can not exactly take the piss, but you can have a joke with it, and it'll have a joke back with you. And yeah, I just think it's brilliant for that. One of the biggest like takeaways I got from it though was I love the female vocalists in the band. I feel bad usually when I like want to single out a single member or a particular member. I want to find out the names, but with 30 odd people in the band, I think there's 5 vocalists, 3 male, 2 female. I think. And I don't know enough about the band to say that one or that one or that one or that one. But the female vocalists, I was staggered. I was fucking guffawed when I found out that the female vocalists aren't Swedish. Aren't Irish, sorry. I thought they would come from, like the accent on Blame the Brits, I thought the person singing that came from at least one of the islands. But the fact this is a Swedish band with Swedish members, I thought this was fucking crazy. Because the vernacular. Is it just the accent? Is that just the fancy word for that? I guess the delivery of the lyrics in songs like Blame the Brits, that little twang the vocalist has got, it just sounds very Celtic and very in keeping with what in my head, folk music and pirate folk music would sound like. And then you get to the voice on Death of Bellows. It's fucking stunning, that song, and the performance on that. It chills you right down to your bones. And it doesn't help as well. So it's very like idyllic, very quiet, very gentle kind of song. And when the chorus kicks in, and it's ashes to ashes, dust into dust. The vocalist in it is obviously being like very gentle, and then backing her is just like a handful of the male vocalists, and they're all being ashes to ashes, dust into. It's just fucking ASMR levels there, and I apologise if I've triggered anyone else's ASMR. It's unlikely because I don't have a delicate feature on my body, but there we are. Yeah, fucking Death of Bellows is such a beautifully delivered song. Blame the Brits is as well, but for completely different reasons. It's just, this whole album is stupid fun, and I don't want them, if they ever hear this review, I don't want them to feel like me calling it stupid is a bad thing. There are certain albums where you just need to put on and think, I just know I'm going to have fun. I don't have to overthink it too much. I don't have to analyse the intricacies, because I can't. It's folk music. I don't know enough about folk music. You just want some music where it's going to give you a little pick-me-up. You can have like a little a whisk away in your imagination. I so wish either this album came out or I knew about this band when I was playing Black Flag a few years back. As much as I love the music on that game, this would have been so much fucking better. And I think for an album like this, it's very important in these trying times with lockdown, corona, having a leader whose mind is made of bubblegum. In these trying times, it's always important to remember that at one point in time, we could have been dealing with pirates. We could have been dealing with theft, looting, crime, smelliness, scurvy, big old swords, rum, the theft of tea. And then think of that, and then slap this on, and then you realise how fucking cool that life would have been. Man, I wish I was a pirate. When I put eyeliner on, I apparently look like a pirate, which I've had to do for work a few times, but that's not the point. It's fucking great, this. It's daft fun, and again, I don't want anyone to think that because I'm calling it things like daft and stupid, I'm negative about it. I'm nothing about positive about this album. Looking at the track lists, I can't really think of a song that I've listened to and thought I didn't like that. There are obviously songs that I'm weaker on than others. But no, it's fucking brilliant. It's, yeah, just a lot of fun. It's called Hostis Humani Generis. I buggered that up. But it's the 4th album from Ye Banished Privateers, a Swedish pirate folk band. Get on it. It's a lot of fun. We need fun right now. From that to another kind of party-based music. Looking at one of the oldest like underground bands that I know of. Oldest in the way of I've known about them longer than, not that they're old. They are called This Place Is a Zoo, and this is their third EP called Apathy. They're from Palmdale, California, and they are like a party deathcore kind of thing. You got your party hardcore with like Cancer Bats and Every Time I Die. You got party death metal with Black Dahlia. Then we have party deathcore. It happens. So yeah, I've been aware of this band for a lot longer than I realised. They released a free EP in 2012. Literally called This Is a Free Fucking EP. Or words to that effect. And it was just mad shit. It was a time where I was like really trying to get in tune to what kind of music I liked and what kind of music I wanted to listen to. And yeah, from that EP, they had a cover of Duality by Slipknot, and it largely kept to the source material because of the fact that This Place Is a Zoo have like an electronic element in there, and those little bits and having the little pulses of electronic came quite natural. The biggest difference was obviously verses and that sort of thing follow the more hardcore ethos where it was screened vocals and very much in your face. The mixing for the band at the time was very, very weird. It always felt like they were constantly trying to fight who's going to be like the biggest sound at any one point in time. The other song from the EP was the Duality cover was actually pretty decent. I really liked it. The other song from the time that they were really big on was Super Devil Juice. I feel like that was going to be their lead single for life at that point. I know a lot of like up-and-coming bands have that one single that they push to the heavens. I feel like it's Super Devil Juice purely because I think it got released 3 times. I think it was the lead single up until the EP got released, and then the EP released with it on, and then they released a re-recording of it as well. So I feel like Super Devil Juice was like their song for a while, and it was a great song. Really bouncy, kind of like a new metal vibe in there, but at the time, the hardcore influence in their music was a lot bigger than it is now. So it was very like bouncy, hardcore, death metal sort of stuff. I kind of feel like it was a bit rooted in like New York kind of hardcore, if we're going to be really, really niche. But yeah, it was a lot of fun at the time. Afterwards, they released another EP. They go straight to the album. Boop. No, so they had the EP in 2012. They released an EP in 2014 called People Movers. The debut album came out in June 2015. It was called Strangers. They released an EP the following year called An Even Better Time, and then they went kind of quiet, and then they've released Apathy. So here they are. Said the same thing twice. In Apathy, then, the sound remains very them. Listen to them back then, because I only really listened to that EP. Listen to that EP and then listening to Apathy, you can definitely tell they are the same band. It is that very weird electronica on top of very hardcore inspired or hardcore rooted deathcore. Now though, I feel like it's very much more refined. Songs feel like they have a lot more structure. Riffs have a lot more groove in them. I'm thinking like that transition to No Time to Bleed into The Black Crown, when Suicide Silence riffs got very much slower and a bit more groovier. I think this has got more that kind of aesthetic into it. And I think there's a lot more that goes on to the songwriting nowadays. But back then, you could tell they were like a bunch of young kids trying to make music for maybe the first time. Now though, I feel like more thoughts going into like this bit should go here, this bit should go there, we should do this in this part, and etc, etc, etc. I think that's just, I think just a bit more intelligence behind their music now. It's an explosive start with the EP and the song The Albatross. I feel like it's like a habit for them. The first song on their releases are always like the in-your-face hardcore shit. And Albatross follows as well. It's like this blaring, blasting hardcore. It's got these like weird pulses of, initially I put like imagine getting like a sci-fi game on PlayStation 2 in the early days, a sort of like electronic, futuristic sort of shit. Now though, it kind of reminds me of like Gran Turismo on the PlayStation 1. I only say that because it's like that whoa. it reminds me a lot of like the Matrix style, futuristic, sci-fi future sort of stuff that everyone in the 2000s was like really on board with or really obsessed with. So that's a nice little callback. I think it's, I don't know if it's meant to sound like that or not, but I feel like it's a cool, like different way of sounding electronics in hardcore or deathcore, whatever you want to call this. And yeah, in terms of their songwriting, again, it's 8 years since I listened to them, so yeah, it's going to be a huge gap in how they would have written songs then and how people would have perceived them to now. And yeah, I still like Albatross is like a really, really cool way to start the EP. I feel like the EP's bookended really well. So the final song on the album, final song on the EP, On Becoming Dirt, it's got this like really, really great speed metal riff about a quarter of the way through. And that's trading off with some really intense drum fills. It then goes on to have like a bit more of a like melodic hardcore section in the riffs, and that's a bit more central in the song. And so yeah, Albatross and On Becoming Dirt are two pretty decent songs. The song in the middle, like the stuff in the middle is pretty like middle of the park chords kind of stuff. Feed Me Lies is a little bit better than Poppycock and The Hate We Bring, but yeah, the rest of the songs are very much just like very standard. It's has some nice riffs in there, some nice moments, enough to rack your head to. I did like a cursory glance at the debut album, Strangers. So comparing Apathy to Strangers, the production and the mix is so much better on Apathy. Again, whereas before they were very like frenetic at best, we'll say. The mix back then was very much a who like I think everyone was just set the same, and it was a case of if you play loud, you're heard more. If you play quiet, you're going to sit at the back. Whereas now I feel like, yeah, more thought's gone into production. People are layered better. People know when to drop off and come back in again. Vocalist Charlie War sounds like he's got way more control over his voice nowadays. Back then, it was a case of it just sounded very, very frantic screaming, whereas now it feels like it still screams, it still growls, but it feels like he's got more control and he's not hurting himself. And I think he sounds a lot better. It's very, very, again, it's very middle of the road, the EP. I feel like going back to it was more like a nostalgia sort of thing. Like I said, they're one of the first, well, a band I was listening to when I was first getting into what I like and dislike about music from that time period. And yeah, it's just very middle of the road stuff. There's a lot to like bang your head to. There's nothing groundbreaking. I definitely prefer this kind of This Place Is a Zoo with the better song. It's much better songwriting. I feel like they know how to deal with music now and how to write music a lot better. The production's improved massively. And I hate the term. It sounds like such a wanky thing to say, but I do think they've matured as a band and as individuals. Obviously, it's 8 years difference from what I'm listening to them beforehand. And yeah, I also feel like it's just that party kind of deathcore. It's just not something I'm into anymore. Like back then when I was trying to find every genre that ever existed, I probably would have been a bit more into it. But nowadays, it's natural you find out what you like and dislike. So it's very, very middle of the road stuff. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's the changes in the sound and changes in the songwriting would make me want to pick up or maybe want to listen to an album of this. And I feel like there would be a handful of songs I could take away, like what I did with this, Shikari, that sort of thing. This is when they come out with an album next year that can rival Code Orange. Yeah, bastards. Yeah, for me, it's just a style of music that I'm not particularly fond of. For what it is, I suppose it's very good. It's very middle of the road for me personally. But I just know that there's still like a very cult following for this like pie style deathcore, and it was nice to like revisit a band that I haven't really thought about for a while. The EP, it's called, as I'm playing with a teabag. The EP is called Apathy, kind of ironic, and the band is called This Place Is a Zoo. I don't like giving particularly negative reviews to like small, very small or smaller bands. But I tried to like phrase it where it's not overly negative, saying you're shit, because like saying a band like Green Day is shit, they're never gonna listen to me, and they already know what kind of music they're gonna make anyways. But for smaller bands, when you particularly consider how much effort goes into making music, and for me, like, I don't know, can you see it behind me? My microphone might be in the way. That's going to sound shit for audio listeners, but I've got a bass guitar behind me and it's just gathering dust, and then there's me saying your music doesn't sound like proper, and it's just fucking yeah. But if I chose to try and review music, I've got to say stuff. Yes, we're going to move on to the final album of the week. God help me, I've talked myself into a corner then, didn't I? But it's cool because we're going to end on high. It is the staggering ninth. We don't often get to those sort of albums, do we? The ninth studio album from the Orlando-based Titans, I guess you could say at this point. It's Trivium. It's the album you've all heard. You all know exactly what you think about it, and you all know how fucking brilliant it is, but I'm going to tell you as well. It's called What the Dead Men Say. Trivium have had what could best be described as a tumultuous existence. You had like the early promise of Ember to Inferno. You had like the next big thing label attached to them with Ascendancy and a little bit with the Crusade. You had like when Vengeance Falls came out, it was always a case of I heard them so much considered like what could have been. And I remember them being compared to the likes of Bullet for My Valentine, and it's fucking, looking back now, it's ludicrous to think they were ever compared to Bullet in the, they could have been really, really big. They should have been headlining Download. Don't know why I went Kermit then. So yeah, they went from like what could have been, and then the fucking comeback they had on The Sin and the Sentence, and now What the Dead Men Say. It's astonishing and it's so good to see, and it's also really good to see that along the way of all, like, because the middle section from Crusade into Shogun into In Waves into Vengeance Falls, they were always like, in terms of how they were received, it was very up and down kind of reviews. But along the way, no matter how much that we were saying like, this should have been bigger, or this is like the next best thing or whatever, it was always a case of that I always felt that Trivium were being respected. Every time they said this album is just not what Trivium should be making, it's not what we want to hear, and it's such a shame. But I'm still gonna listen to the next Trivium album because I feel like they can draw it back. It was really, like, looking back, it was so nice to see so many people, like reviews, critics, just general music listeners. Every time Trivium would release something and it maybe wasn't up to scratch, we're like, okay, but we're still going to like listen to them next time, or we're still going to watch them live, or there's always going to be something that, like, there's always going to be a following for Trivium, basically. And I just think that's so rare. Like, you can look at a lot of other bands where they make a shit, they make a shit album and then that's it. They just drop off, and either they split up, or people just stop listening to them, or they say they're shit and there's no coming back. I'm probably guilty of it as well. But with Trivium, it was always a case of everyone always supported them. If like they released what was perceived as a shit album, people still said it's a shame, but we're still gonna go watch them live. We're still gonna buy their shit. We're still gonna be there for them. And that, yeah, it was really, really cool to see, because I don't really think you get many bands that do that ever. And in terms of like Trivium sound, that like they've always wanted, or they always seemed willing to experiment with the sound. In Crusade and in Silence in the Snow, they went full, or next to full, clean vocals. I know for Silence in the Snow, a lot of it was down to medical reasons, because I think Matt blew his vocals out. So there's an asterisk with that, but then they went very melodic with that album anyways. On Vengeance Falls, they had David Draymond come in and have like a very different style of production for their album. in terms of like just the genres they play with, they've been melodic metal with Crusade, and especially Silence in the Snow. They went very metalcore in From Ember to Inferno, Ascendancy, and I think in Waves as well. I'm gonna throw that in there. Then they went very thrash on Shogun and The Sin and Sentence. I think there's like a prog element in both of them as well. The melodeath in The Sin and Sentence as well. You know, you compare it to other bands who, like, on one side who have tried new things, it didn't work, and then it went back again, Suicide Silence, and then bands who have just done the same thing for years and years and years. Like, at the same time, I tried to squeeze in a Black Dahlia Murder review on this episode, but I just haven't listened to it enough. And I can't comment too much because, like, Trivium, I've listened to everything except From Ember to Inferno and Vengeance Falls. So there's like a long back catalogue of Trivium and like the evolution of the sound that I've listened to, whereas Black Dahlia Murder, I've only heard snippets of albums in the last 3 albums. Excuse me. And so I don't want to comment on like whether or not them playing like pretty much the same kind of sound for album after album after album is good or not, because I don't know how well or not they've done it. But you've got the bands who just like stick to one thing over and over again, and as soon as they like try to go out of it, then like they hit a roadblock and go back again. But then Trivium were always like, we want to try this. If you don't like it, we're probably going to do it again. You know, look at the transition you went from Ascendancy, which was a big metalcore thrash metal album, and they went to Crusade, which is very melodic heavy metal, melodic metalcore. And there was like, we don't like it, you need to go back to Scream. It's like, okay, we're going to go back, but we're going to go back to Shogun, which is this big monolithic heavy metal album. And then they went back a slightly more metalcore to In Waves. And then, you know, like Silence in the Snow, everyone's like, you're being too melodic. It's like, okay, we're still going to use clean vocals, but now we're going to use it in a melodic death metal album in The Sin and Sentence. So I just really love the fact that Trivium want to they don't want to be pigeonholed as one style of music forever. I feel like they have got a lot more creativity than I think people give them credit for. And I follow Paolo and I follow Matt on social media, and you can just tell. And you can tell from like the whole band actually, from interviews, from pictures, from just their like. At the end of the year, they all post like their favorite albums. It's always full of like heavy metal and extreme metal and heavy rock albums. These are heavy metal fans playing heavy metal. Like, you compare that to like say Metallica. Yeah, their early career was very. We listened to new wave of British heavy metal sort of stuff, but then that mid '90s stuff, they got way more into the bluesy side of Deep Purple, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Leonard Skinner, that kind of thing. So what they were listening to and what they enjoyed, like a different side of what they enjoyed, made its way into the music. Whereas these guys, they all fucking love heavy metal, and that's what they want to be. They want to play heavy metal. They want to be heavy metal. Like, they're bringing in Alex Bent, who's previously in a brutal death metal outfit. You don't really play brutal death metal if your favorite band is fucking Fleetwood Mac. Although if I found out his favorite band is Fleetwood Mac, I'm just gonna look like a right dickhead. So yeah, and like, you watch Matt Heafy on Twitch, and he's got like a 3-4 hour long stream. 2 hours of it's just him playing through his own songs to practice, and fuck me as he improves as a guitarist. Like, I've tuned into some of those streams, and he's just insanely good at pretty much anything he does. He's a bastard for that. But then, so that's 2 hours of him practicing his songs to like really, really get acquainted with it and just practice riffs. And then like an hour or two afterwards, it's just him dicking around and playing songs that aren't his, but he's just triviuming them. That's actually really hard to say. And yeah, it's a very rooted thing about this style of music you want to do, because it's very them. The Trivium as a band are like, the entire band wear themselves on the sleeve, and yeah, for that I just really, really enjoy it. And it because of that, I think the music of being heavy comes more naturally and it feels more organic when you've got that. So yeah, in terms of the music itself for What the Dead Men Say, the big draw for me from The Sin and the Sentence was this huge melodic death metal influence, and a lot of that came from Alex, as I said a minute ago. You've got bits on, like the pre-chorus and chorus on The Ones We Leave Behind, pretty much the entire of the Defiant and Amongst the Shadows and the Stones. Amongst the Shadows, the way that sounds like bloody go, blah, 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 up in your grill. It's fucking insane. And it's such an intense way to open a song. That's like, what, track 4 or something? And the union Alex has in his drum rolls with, like, to work with Paolo to make such a cool rhythm section, to then work with Matt and Corey for the riffs and how to make them sound, like, crunchier and faster and better. And even the points where, like, Matt and Corey are doing, like, Iron Maiden style dual guitar harmonies, it's just unreal, because then you've got this rhythm section in the background that's also going 19 to the dozen whilst making Matt and Corey sound so good. And that melodic death metal stuff in it, and like the riffs that they use, and like the song structures, it's so fucking great how they do it. I had a few reminders as well of Silence in the Snow. And for me personally, it's not a bad thing. I quite liked Silence in the Snow. I think I'm definitely in the minority when it comes to that, but I really, really like the album. Bleed Into Me is this big melodic heavy metal song, which I think is really, really good. The opening riff and the verses of The Ones We Leave Behind reminds me a lot of the title track from Silence. And there's a few little bits of the Catastrophist as well. It kind of sounds a bit Silence in the Snowy. On the Catastrophist, I really like, in the pre-chorus bit, Matt uses, the way Matt sings, it's like strained, and it sounds like, it's almost like his screams, but without distortion, as stupid as to say. It's like this really strained, like slightly high pitched. I can't do it myself, but I can't remember the lyric he sings. But it's so different than what I've heard Matt sound like. But I love it for that reason. It's just, he's adding more what he can do to his vocals. And as a result of that, adding more ways where Trivium can sound different while still being very heavy. I think it just works so fucking well. And it's the first time in a long time I've really noticed like the backing vocals on a Trivium record, and the backing screams to Bending the Arc to Fear and the Defiant, those cleans on the back of What the Dead Men Say. I think Paolo and Corey backing up Matt to make him sound brilliant, but to also add that extra drama, that finesse to the band's sound. It makes a very organic sounding wall of sound to the music, and just makes the band and the band's sound even bigger than it already is. And yeah, I just couldn't, after a while, it's one of those things, but when you notice it once, you notice it over and over and over again for each subsequent song. And then when you restart the album, you hear, oh shit, I missed it on this song and this song and this song. Yeah, I feel like everyone on the album just is doing such a brilliant job and such a solid job. Yeah, it's fucking phenomenal, this record. It's so good. And for me, I've heard for years like who or like what bands or what artists are going to be the ones to take over from Metallica, from Iron Maiden, from Judas Priest, and from all these long-standing heavy metal acts, which we still book in the big slots for festivals, which we still rely on to year on year to produce the big albums. If the first answer to who should take over from headlining Download, or who should take over from headlining Bloodstock, or like who should, when you say to people, oh, I've got a friend who wants to get into heavy metal but modern, what should we give them? If your first answer to like take over from like those big bands isn't Trivium, I just don't know what's going on. I know there's a big argument for Ghost as well, Fairfax, but if you want just proper, like, Ghost has got their own shit going on, but just for me, my opinion, just proper heavy metal for like a defining kind of heavy metal. Like Metallica, I feel like when you say heavy metal, they are the go-to. I know there's like bands that came beforehand, and there's always the argument between Maiden and Metallica. For me, I'm a Metallica guy. When you say heavy metal, for me, I'd go Metallica, and I feel like for the future, when like next generation saying like I want to get to heavy metal, they say okay, Trivium. I think Trivium should be the next legacy band for the genre and for the scene in general. I just think they are a really good representative. They know heavy metal, they understand heavy metal, and they're just a couple of really cool dudes, and they like shitting on Trapped, which apparently is a thing now. So, people are pretty much on board with shitting on Trapped right now, so good for them. And yeah, that will about do it for this week. You've had reviews for Enter Shikari, Ye Banished Privateers, The Place of the Zoo, and Trivium. There will not be an episode next week, nor for the forthcoming month or so. I have to move out of my apartment, and it's a lot of it's down to this COVID stuff, and a lot of it's down to my landlord being an absolute prick, and this house is shit. The plan was, so my tenancy runs out on the 8th of June. The plan was to sort of like delay it until the end of the month and then move my shit out then. And in the meantime, I was going to try and think of like non-time sensitive content, even though most of the albums I've listened to have been out for a few months. I was going to try and just get something recorded and then just release it over time and hopefully fill the gap. But I'm now moving out this Saturday instead, when it's Thursday, so I've got 2 days to pack up and move. Oh, fuck me, it's going to suck. So, come back. So, yeah, it's not too much hassle. I'm just going to go back to doing written reviews again, which I did when I moved here back in December. So, next couple of weeks, it's just going to be written reviews on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So do go follow me on there at Desolation Pod. I might even try to set up a website or blog of some kind, just to put this like in one fluid place. But there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, and a lot of financial uncertainty, especially. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, please do still stick around. My English is much improved, and yeah, it's just nice to talk about music. And I would love to hear what you think about anything I reviewed this week, anything I've reviewed in the past, anything that I'm going to review in the next few weeks or so. So, as I said, at Desolation Pod, remember, stay inside, help the NHS, overthrow your government the next possible chance, and I will see you soon. Take care.